Okay, so now we're going to be talking about level of processing hypothesis. This is an idea of how information gets stored in memory. Like how does it, what leads to better retention? And so, yeah, and so this is very simple. It just says that that memory is a function of how you process it. So if you so what determines how well you retain something or remember something is based on or determined mainly by how the level at which you encode it. So, for example, if I said, well, okay, is dog in uppercase or lowercase level? That's kind of like a visual level of processing, which we would consider shallow, because you don't really need to know anything about dog in order to answer that question, right? Where and maybe a more uh, medium level of processing would be like does does dog rhyme with fog, right? So it's like even though you don't have to like, access the memory or the meaning, you at least have to access the sound, right? And then we could ask a more deeper level of processing, like the semantics or meaning. So like a four-legged pet that often chases cats and chews on bones. That would be like a way of processing the word dog in a more deeper way, right? And so in this study, the sort of study that did this, that introduced this idea, uh, so basically participants were shown a series of words, and for some of those words, they were asked questions that were meant to orient the person in a shallow fashion, to encode it in a shallow way. So is the word dog in uppercase or lowercase, right? Or it could be a phonological medium level of encoding. So does the word dog rhyme with log? Or, it could be even deeper level. So, like, does dog fit in this sentence? The blank chased the cat. Okay. And then this was followed by a surprise recognition test. So participants weren't even trying to remember, right? They just did this, and then later, like, oh, there's a memory test. Okay. And they found, not surprisingly, so first off, let me say you can ignore the difference between yes and no in this graph. Just know that if you process something more deeply, that was associated with better recognition. Um, and I always tell students, right, that most students are just going to read their notes and that's it for a test. And that's not a good way to do it. It's not passive. You should not be passively processing or receiving the information. You should be actively processing the information, thinking about it, right? So if people ask, like, what helps memory? Well, to think about stuff. You should think very deeply about stuff, and that will lead to better memory. So, elaborating, connecting it to previous ideas, figuring out what the implications are of a given idea, that kind of thing. Those are the things that will help you on a test. In any case, the other thing is that this was a surprise recognition test. So participants weren't trying to even memorize this stuff, these words. It was sort of like memory was a byproduct of thinking or processing, right? So memory is sort of what is processing in a sense, right? So one implicit assumption of this is that the act of remembering and the act of processing are inseparable, right? And so the way you process information determines how well it is remembered. And because of this, you can't separate the two, right? So in a sense, memory is processing. Okay. What did I want to say about that? So yeah, level of processing is about a shift from talking about memory structure to thinking about memory processing, right? Um, and the idea is that processing and memory are running on the same hardware. And this is similar to neural networks, I should remind you, in which the memory of the system is the same as the processing of the system. Um, yeah. And then I guess, oh, the other thing I wanted to say, so to help with this analogy, right? Processing and remembering are kind of like writing with a pen. Okay. So the act of pressing the pen harder is like deeper processing that automatically creates a darker, longer lasting memory, right? Or mark, stronger memory. And so you can't separate processing the pen from making the mark, right? They are one event. And so likewise, you can't separate processing from forming a memory. The depth of processing is the memory strength, right? Okay. Okay, and that's the end of the lecture.